We really thought we were going to get an end-of-year break, but Jacob Zuma said no. Just a few days ago, he told the watching world that he wasn't voting for the African National Congress in 2024. He wouldn't campaign for them, he wouldn't endorse them, he wouldn't even vote for them. In fact, he told us he was going to vote for a little-known brand new political party called Mkhonto we Sizwe that was only registered in September, and basically nothing is known about that. He was voting for them next year and that everybody else should vote for MK next year instead of the African National Congress. Just 1 month ago, we did an entire episode on the rivalry between Zuma and Cyril Ramaphosa. We talked about how it is the defining rivalry of South Africa's modern moment, about how Zuma reacts and Ramaphosa responds in the next 6 to 8 months before the election will define the outcome of it, that it could be the difference between an ANC majority and falling short of 50%. Well, now, Zuma has basically taken a powder keg to any of the dynamics that existed before, and now we need to talk about what his latest pronouncement means for the ANC and the country come 2024. Welcome to The Issue with Dan Corder. It's South Africa's watch party. Because South Africa is a movie, why not come watch it with us? And after what Jacob Zuma did just a few days ago in the latter days of December 2023, there has never, ever been a Christmas movie like the one that South Africa is showing right now. So let's analyze and talk about it and unpack it. Remember, every single episode is available right here in video form and also as an audio podcast wherever you like to get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Google, the rest. We are there. Lastly, if you're brand new to the show, I'd love it if you quickly clicked subscribe on the channel itself. It costs you nothing, takes a second of your time, and makes a massive difference as we try to build up the show where we talk about a brand new issues facing South Africa every single week. Right, let's get into it. This is The Issue with the bombshell announcement from Jacob Zuma. In last month's episode, we explained how Zuma is literally haunting Cyril Ramaphosa. He is the Grinch currently stealing Christmas. He is the boogeyman under the bed for South Africa and the ANC's president. And that was before Zuma did the unthinkable this weekend. Because, to be clear, no ANC former or current president has ever denounced the ANC to this extent, has never, ever said that they were voting for another party or that the rest of the country should. It has been described as ill-disciplined already. There's a part of the ANC's constitution that explicitly says you are not allowed to do this as any member of the ANC, rank and file or high leadership. And his words are so damning of this current African National Congress. He, through his daughter, Duduzile, who was speaking, said, "It's not enough to withdraw from the ANC campaign, which will lead our people to more misery, poverty, racism, unemployment, deepening load shedding, and a government led by sellouts and apartheid collaborators." Those are the charges against Ramaphosa, his government, and therefore the current ANC leadership. The statement continues, "No single organization can pull us out of the present crisis. We require the same spirit of unity which saw us defeating the monster of apartheid." And when he was talking about this new political party, Mkhonto we Sizwe, MK, which obviously means Spirit of the Nation and was the name of the ANC's military wing that was fought against apartheid and was disbanded in 1994, he said, "The new People's War starts from today. The only crucial difference is that instead of the bullet, this time we will use the ballot." And he said that this new party, Mkhonto we Sizwe, was registered with the IEC with Zuma's knowledge and blessing. So this has been cooking. But Zuma's not leaving the ANC, just as a by the way. He made that very clear. He will live and die an ANC member. He's been an ANC member for longer than half a century, and he intends to stay in the ANC. He's selling this as I'm doing this to save the country and save the ANC from itself. This is the only way, so this is the path that I have chosen for the good of the people. So why is this the biggest moment in South African politics? Not just in 2023, but maybe in half a decade. Because Jacob Zuma still has absolutely massive sway over millions and millions of voters, particularly Zulu voters in KwaZulu-Natal who love the man and have followed him and voted for him ever since he rose to power in the ANC over a decade and a half ago. Remember that the Inkatha Freedom Party was nearly destroyed by Jacob Zuma as a powerful Zulu leader, convincing millions of people in KwaZulu-Natal to vote ANC, often for the first time, and vote away from the IFP. KZN, along with Gauteng, has the most voters of any province in South Africa, and the ANC has been seeing significant declines in voters in KZN ever since Zuma was deposed as ANC president by Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC is now in significant danger of losing power in KwaZulu-Natal. The IFP has come back super strong ever since Zuma was deposed. They've won back a lot of ANC voters. The EFF has grown massively, and a lot of their success in 2019-2021 elections were their growth in KZN, although now recently they started to lose quite a lot of those votes to the IFP. And the DA is growing every single year in KwaZulu-Natal. So fairly small, but growing every single year and becoming more sizable. And it's no coincidence that the ANC's vote has flagged in KZN since Zuma was deposed. And one of the obvious reasons for this slide is that Zuma and his faction have shown pretty open disdain for Ramaphosa's faction ever since Ramaphosa's faction took over power from the ANC and dethroned Jacob Zuma. In fact, they've shown pretty open insubordination a bunch of times in the last handful of years. Zuma's Radical Economic Transformation faction has criticized the ANC government under Ramaphosa pretty openly. Zuma has taken Ramaphosa to court directly just before the last ANC leadership conference. Zuma's faction blamed Ramaphosa's faction for the ANC performing poorly in the local 2021 elections in KZN, but Ramaphosa's faction hit back and said, but all of you who are based in KwaZulu-Natal, Zuma and your faction, you didn't campaign for the ANC. You didn't push us. You weren't on the ground getting voter turnout. It's your fault, and it's tantamount to sabotage of us, the Ramaphosa faction, that you basically tried to undermine the ANC's efforts to win votes in KZN in 2021. And Ramaphosa's strategy has been to try and quietly remove as many remaining Zuma allies as possible from the ANC, most recently Ace Magashule, while at the same time trying to be as kind and nice as possible to Zuma and not react personally directly to Zuma's provocations, to try and keep him in line by being soft towards him. Zuma's kind of like that one uncle who is coming to Christmas. He's family, you have to invite him. He's blood relative to Christmas, so he's coming, but he can't hold his tongue, and he's got some strange beliefs, and he's got weird beefs that are one-sided between himself and other members of the family and family friends, and he always says something bad or causes a stir at the Christmas braai, but he's coming. And so you're just trying to minimize the risk of him tearing the family apart this Christmas. Ramaphosa has been trying to placate Zuma and save Christmas in the same way. So earlier this year, Zuma was supposed to go back to jail. We all remember he got a prison sentence for contempt of the Constitutional Court, and magically, allegedly Zuma went to escort prison, was re-enrolled in the justice system, and was in there for like an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then he was released because Ramaphosa used his power as president to call for a remission. Now, a remission is when the criminal justice system is overloaded, maybe the jails are too full, the state can't support the system, you decide to release a bunch of prisoners early, cut their sentences short because you need to ease the burden on the system, you need to get some people out of it, but they pick non-violent, allegedly not dangerous, not threats to society people to release. So Ramaphosa called a remission on the morning that Zuma would have to go back to jail. It's all just incredibly convenient. And on the morning, Justice Minister Ronald Amola was taking questions from the media, and they said, why did this happen now? Who else has been released? Like, he said there were thousands of other prisoners who were going to be released in this remission process, but he couldn't name any other single prisoner who was going to be released or had been released that morning. It was just Zuma. But that's not the only example. Back in 2021, the Supreme Court of Appeal found that the state, that means Ramaphosa's government, had been paying many of Jacob Zuma's legal fees in many of his on-running court battles to the value of tens of millions of rands. And the SCA said that money had to stop being paid to Zuma, but it also, the money that had already been paid unjustly to Zuma's legal costs had to be retrieved. And it was 18 million rand or so at the time. And then just a month ago, in early November 2023, the SCA discovered that the state attorney had not recovered that money, not even tried to get it back. In fact, Zuma had continued to benefit from the state, and now, all told, the state had paid over 30 million rands of legal fees towards him that he should never have got in the first place. And the presidency, that means Ramaphosa's spokesperson, had to come out and say, we did not give a directive to ignore the Supreme Court of Appeal's decision because that's the reasonable understanding or the reasonable assumption of how this continues to happen, because if Ramaphosa wanted to continue to play nice with Zuma and hope that he wouldn't throw his toys at Christmas, then it would make sense to try and give Zuma money to cover his legal fees, even though they shouldn't have. So all that led to our video a month ago about this rivalry and wondering what Zuma would do in the run-up to the election. Just a few weeks ago, we interviewed Wayne Sussman, who is like one of the best elections data analysts in the whole of South Africa. And Wayne was talking about how particularly South KwaZulu-Natal has got tons and tons of voters, and he describes that as Jacob Zuma's gift to the ANC, because he brought all of those voters from the IFP a ton of years ago and strengthened the ANC's vote in KwaZulu-Natal. And if Zuma doesn't go out and campaign for the ANC and go and get all those voters for the African National Congress, then the ANC is going to suffer, not just in KZN, but nationally, because that accounts for so many votes. But now Zuma has gone nuclear. He has told the nation that he's not voting ANC, that its leaders right now in the government are sellouts and apartheid collaborators. He's voting for a different political party called Umkhonto we Sizwe, and he is telling the nation to vote for them instead of the ANC. That is the uncle at Christmas telling you that you were a mistake and your parents never wanted you in the first place, stuffing a Christmas cake in a child's face, then setting the Christmas tree on fire, and then passing out in the garden. Can they afford to discipline Zuma? Well, can they afford not to? Because it surely brings the ANC's strength versus Zuma into question, makes them look weak if they don't discipline him. And in some ways, one must imagine that Zuma knew that this would be the consequence of his actions, and he's kind of daring them to take him on. The ANC, for the first time, might have to go to war with Zuma and his legacy openly to fight for those voters in KZN and beyond who might be swayed by Zuma to not vote ANC and vote for somebody else. And the ANC is going to have to respond to those charges: crime, poverty, racism, unemployment, load shedding, corruption. They're going to have to respond and try to say, as they've been saying to the rest of South Africa, that it's not that bad with all these situations that are unfolding in the country, that it could, and under the ANC it is getting better and there are signs of a turnaround. And the ANC leadership might now decide to make a clean break with Zuma by defending themselves by saying, no, these problems got really bad under your leadership, Zuma, under your era in your years. This isn't an us problem right now. We're trying to make things better and recover from your damage. Remember Ramaphosa said 8 or 10 wasted years as he described Zuma's administration? That might become a more explicit message, but if they do that, it's open warfare with Zuma, and which way are the voters going to go? And the thing is, Ramaphosa has squeezed Zuma's faction out of the ANC. His people are now in leadership positions. They can act decisively. But if they do, they might hammer their voting constituency in KwaZulu-Natal. And the problem is, I'm not sure how hammering Zuma would affect KwaZulu-Natal votes, firstly, and I'm not sure how cutting Zuma adrift would help them in the rest of the country either. So it feels like they have to do something, but what they do could be very damaging, but doing nothing will definitely be damaging. And right now, all of the polling about what's going to happen in 2024 elections have pretty much the same result, which is ANC is going to get around 50%, based on turnout above or below 50%, but around 50%. And if the ANC drops below 50%, that is going to be such a humiliation for them, such a crisis, such a fall from power. Their last election nationally, they got 57.5%, 58% under Ramaphosa, because Ramaphosa was new and everyone thought he'd fix the country within 6 months. Now imagine after Zuma's done this, their polling gets worse and they plummet in KZN and they get way below 50 nationally. That will have total crisis ramifications for the party. But I think whatever the ANC does will govern what Zuma does next. MK will be known as Jacob Zuma's fight back, screw the ANC project. And so he will be active on the campaign trail and he will be putting himself out there. But to figure out what his game is, what his end is, because maybe you believe that he's doing this to try and save the ANC and save South Africa. But I think most South Africans remember Zuma's conduct during his own years and think that it's probably not the case. With every passing year, his allies become less powerful or are removed from the ANC, and some of them start their own political parties, then they don't go anywhere. And so with every passing year, Zuma is becoming less powerful and less relevant. And that is a serious problem for him, because he's 81, there's not really an opportunity for him to make a grand re-entrance to another part of politics or for a different part of the world. And he needs to continue to be relevant because Jacob Zuma needs money. The man is fighting so many court cases right now. Remember the arms deal? Like 20 years ago, that started. All of the state capture stuff is still happening. He has spent so much money on private prosecutions of Billy Downer and Karen Moore. He tried to have a private prosecution against Ramaphosa. He is burning money on legal fees. And it's not really clear who's paying or if he's just got a vast war chest of his own money. But what is true is he needs so much money, so much more money, because he is facing decades still, probably, of legal cases against him that are going to cost a fortune to try and keep him out of jail and try to protect, I guess, the other people who would come into danger if Zuma's court cases got really dug into and the nitty-gritty of who was involved got exposed. And for Zuma to continue to get money from people, to continue to be someone who people remember needs to be looked after and needs to be given the resources to defend himself in court and beyond, he needs to be relevant. He needs to still be a force. It is quite possible that this move that he's done right now is the nuclear option in that endeavor, trying to continue to be relevant and powerful, a mover, a shaker, to get allies to form around him, to get money to be flowing into his endeavors so that he can continue to defend himself in court. So say the ANC does nothing. They choose not to get involved. They decide not to clap back at him at all. They don't fight explicitly, and they try to suck the oxygen out of the situation, suck the oxygen out of the fire, and hope that just by ignoring him, the story will go away, media won't cover it, people will forget about it and not take him seriously. Zuma will then make another provocation. He will then definitely get in front of national and world media and make another stab at the ANC to force them to fight with him. And if the ANC does punch back, he will punch back at that. So this new crazy dynamic of Zuma fighting against his own party is here to stay and will have a massive influence on the outcome of the election. It's probably too soon to say. We haven't had time to do polling what implication it will probably have. But now, if the ANC thought they were in trouble before, the ANC is really going to have to go to the mattresses and fight now. And the country is waiting to see what's going to happen. So that's the issue with Jacob Zuma's big announcement. That is the issue with Jacob Zuma's unprecedented attack on the African National Congress. Thank you so much for watching The Issue with Dan Corder. We will be back every week and even next week, deep in festive, because South Africa just does not rest. The movie keeps on going and we are the watch party. We're just going to have to keep on working. Let us know what you think is going to happen in the comments on social media. Remember that the full analysis of this mad moment is on our podcast, because every single episode's got a video version that you're watching right now, and also a longer podcast analysis you can get on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you want to go. Thank you for watching. See you next week.